What's up, everyone? Ryan here, the Crypto Grinder, and today we'll be having the Wax team. So just waiting for them to come on via Zoom, and we are ready to get started, guys. Share this link, guys. For those who are interested in gaming, and this is one of the biggest online marketplaces known. All right, and they're doing very, very well, guys. I think you guys should definitely take a look at this today. All right. All right, and we have Malcolm, and we were just waiting for William. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Malcolm, I think your mic is muted at the moment.
Yeah. I think William's waiting for you to promote him as a panelist.
Sure, will do. I got you. All right, gentlemen, ready to rock and roll. What's up, everyone? This is Ryan here, the Crypto Grinder, and today we have the Wax team. All right, so let me introduce two handsome gentlemen. So firstly is the CEO, William Quigley. All right, welcome, William. Good evening. I heard that you are in Las Vegas at the moment.
I am. Yeah, I was at a blockchain conference earlier.
Man, all right. It's definitely happening there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And also we have the president of the Wax team as well, Malcolm Casselle.
Hey,
welcome, Malcolm.
Thanks for having me.
So are you both attending? Are you all both attending the event in Las Vegas at the moment, or
Yep.
both? All right, awesome, cool. Okay, guys, we are very, very excited. I think this space is not just about cryptocurrencies, but I think the most important thing, it's about gaming, man. And of course, I have been an avid gamer at least in at least a good part of my life. I mean, I still play a little bit of Hearthstone. But at the end of the day, when I was very much younger, I was very much into Counter-Strike, which is of course the main. Initially, when OPSkins first started out, it was through trading the skins of the guns, and I think there's so many games that are being put on Wax at the moment. Please feel free to share a little bit. But before we go into the good details, maybe let's understand the team a little bit. So, William, could you share a little bit about yourself, as in how do you come to be the CEO of Wax?
Sure. Well, to answer that last question really quickly, Wax is being developed by the founding team around OPSkins. So as the CEO of OPSkins, it would make sense that I'd be involved with Wax. And because OPSkins and Wax are so interrelated, I'll explain briefly my background. I've been working in the virtual item trading space for about 15 years. One of the co-founders of the original version of virtual item trading is a member of our team. His name's Jonathan Yantis. He actually invented the very concept of trading virtual items for fiat and created the largest marketplace for virtual item trading in the world. I joined that board in about 2005. We then got into crypto in Jonathan 2010, me 2012. And we were focused on building and incubating and investing in many, many successful cryptocurrency companies. And ultimately, we discovered in 2015 the concept of skins. We invested and then became partners in OPSkins. And we very much understood what was going on in the skin industry and how big it was growing and how much bigger it was going to be than virtual items. And so we conceived of the concept of Wax shortly after we invested in the Ethereum ICO. And we have a deep background. We can talk about it more in the crypto space. But we invested in the very first ICO, the very first blockchain-based smart contract, and then, of course, Ethereum. And so we've been thinking about how to apply smart contracts to virtual item trading since essentially that concept began. And Wax is the culmination of our thinking on the subject. We can get into more detail, which is probably in the white paper as well, but we can help put a voice to it to help the people watching it today understand why decentralizing virtual item trading is such a powerful concept.
All right. Thank you so much for the very short introduction, William. But we want to know a little bit about how you became the CEO.
How I became the CEO of OPSkins. Well, as I mentioned, I was involved in the very first virtual item trading company because the COO of OPSkins founded the concept. He invented the concept of virtual item trading and then started a very large exchange that became the biggest in the world. So I was on that board. And so when we discovered the team from OPSkins, we first invested and then we advised, and ultimately we had a lot of experience. And you can imagine building the world's biggest virtual item marketplace. And the team asked us to come in and help them grow the business and take it to the next level. And so I became CEO in 2016 to help do that. And for those who work or use the OPSkins platform, they've probably seen a lot of what are hopefully positive changes, adding games, adding scalability, adding payment methods, all of those things we've been pushing in the last, call it, year and a half. So that's been my focus, along with, for about the past year, figuring out exactly how to take the blockchain and utilize it for virtual item trading. And, the culmination of that is Wax.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for that very quick introduction, William. Okay. So now on to Malcolm, the president of the Wax team. So share a little bit about how you actually entered this space. I mean, is it more of crypto that interested you, made you interested in this space, or was it actually cryptocurrencies, or maybe a bit of both? And more importantly, were you a gamer, before you even stepped into this space?
Yeah, well, I started out playing video games early on. I mean, I'm probably a bit older than you, perhaps. I started playing on Commodore 64 and Apple II machines early on. Was on BBSs and hacking games to make them work. And so, I've been playing games for a long time. Unfortunately, as you get older, time gets in the way, so I don't get to play nearly as much as I got to when I was in high school and in college. But I've always been interested in video games and played video games. But I actually started to work with William and Jonathan Yantis, our COO, with a project called Xfire years ago. And then we also, they introduced me to crypto back in 2012. And I ended up, of course, investing in early on in many projects as well. So I've been interested in this space and active in this space. I think we had many portfolio investments in 2012, 2013, 2014, many of which are well known today. But I think, overall, the trading aspect was something that I didn't really know nearly as much about until really the OPSkins project, sort of reached the point that it has in the past year or so. I've been really interested in crypto first, I guess gaming first, and then crypto second. And so that's probably the best way to think about the order for me. But the marketplace concept to me is one that's the most fascinating, because you have all these complex interplay between supply and demand, and how, of course, the ecosystem grows, the tradability of items, the fungibility of items, the uniqueness. There's a lot of really fascinating aspects to how it works.
All right. So let's just dive deep into this, right? Because how big is this market right now? Because it's been 10 years since I've been actually, really played, the MMORPG. I mean, I understand it very well. It's just that I didn't realize that now there's a huge tradable market. I mean, it's not just in the US or Europe. In China, it's huge as well. So please share a little bit about what's the potential we're looking at, what's the current growth that we're looking into this virtual item exchange.
Yeah, and so I assume a lot of your listeners are aware of video game virtual items, but let me try to compact what it could take a month into a very short period of time here. So virtual item trading really started with Ultima Online, a game that came out, online PC game that came out in 1998. That was the game that our
remember
CEO, our COO, Jonathan Yantis, was converted to fiat trading. So it grew from there. It was, remember though, it was virtual item trading. Virtual items are distinguished from skins. Virtual items are items in a game that have real game utility. They give you more power, they give you more protection, maybe they allow you to do some activity. Skins, another type of virtual item, which is what OPSkins mostly focuses on, are strictly cosmetic. They have no in-game utility, but you need a lot of them, just like you need a lot of different shirts and clothes, because they're your online persona. So virtual items got to be somewhere between $15 and $20 billion in secondary market trading up until about, let's say, 2016, where it's most recent data we can get. And when my partners and I discovered skins, the first thing we thought was the fact that these are strictly cosmetic. You don't buy them for a specific purpose. You buy them almost like a change of clothes, something to put on your item, your gun, your car, whatever it is in the game. Our thinking was this is going to be much, much bigger than virtual items, and it has been. As of today, it's about a $50 billion secondary market. The trading of virtual items, skin-based, so these are cosmetic items, versus the traditional virtual items that are mostly for in-game utility. So you can see since 2012, when skins really took off, in just 5 years, that market has grown to 50 billion. The virtual item market was around for about 15 years and was somewhere between 15 and 20 billion. And so already it's a giant market, and that's how it supports businesses like OPSkins and others. But it's just at the beginning, because the vast majority of PC-based games do not have tradable skins. And yet, if you ask me as a 20-year venture capitalist and a longtime video game executive, I'll tell you, there is no smarter way to drive engagement of your game than to have tradable skins. People collect them. Even when they're not playing the game, they're thinking about the skins, which of course means you get more engagement with your game. And so this is the reason I foresee many, many more companies adopting this model. And just look at PUBG, right? PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, a game that didn't exist at the beginning of 2017. Now it's somewhere between the third and fourth most popular skin traded game on OPSkins. So brand new game, massive engagement, and there'll be many, many clones of PUBG. So this is a reason why when people say, why bother with this industry? Because it's so big and it's growing.
Right. I mean, I understand the potential, and that's why I think a lot of players, even people who are interested in just trading skins for business, now they can mix business and pleasure, and that's what I really always wanted to do. Because when I was like gaming, right, the missus was like, "Man, you are wasting your time, man." Now we're looking at a huge billion-dollar business right here. I mean, like, this is serious shit. Okay, so I want to take some questions from the chat, right? And also we have some questions from the research team. So this is from JJ Andy. All right. So with regards to the current OPSkins items, will there be a seamless transfer of virtual items into Wax?
Yeah. So I can, either Malcolm or I will each jump in. I'll take that one. I could lie and say, of course it's going to be seamless, but I've incubated, started, managed, dozens of companies. No, it's not going to be seamless. I would like it to be. We're going to do a really good job, though. And I think for people who understand OPSkins and the scale that we've achieved in just 2.5 years, we're darn good at what we do. I don't think there's anyone else in the world who has more experience trading virtual items. And there's certainly no team who knows anything about tradable virtual items, who knows as much about cryptos and blockchain as us. So it won't be seamless because there's a lot of technical challenges of getting it done. But I will say this, I can promise that the customer experience, once it's launched, will be smooth and will also be exceptional in extending the benefits of the blockchain to people who've traditionally traded around centralized exchanges. And we're going to be smart about it. You know, we won't try to do all of the massive amount of volume that's on OPSkins day one, right? We'll probably do it game by game. And as customers figure things out, as we figure out what customers need help with, we'll adapt and evolve. Like any other consumer product, when you do a go-to-market plan, you've got to do it in a way that is digestible for all of the consumers who are trying to participate.
All right. Anything to add, Malcolm?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the smooth transition really is a function of the speed of the technology and really the ability for really the blockchain to absorb the volume that OPSkins is already doing. So today, there is no actual blockchain technology available that could process the number of transactions currently running on OPSkins. So that's why this is a private blockchain. This is why it's our own protocol that we're building. So we'll be launching, obviously, some portion of the trading volume on at first, and then we'll continue to add more volume as the technology enables it. The scalability component is one of, I think, the core fundamental issues to the token design, and that's why you can't just use an ERC20 token. And of course, things like Bitcoin just wouldn't be able to support the project for a couple of reasons, which we'll probably get into later.
Sure. Okay, so now since we are still on the topic of the exchange itself, okay, so I have this other question. So how will the decentralized nature of WAX solve the existing issues? Because I'm sure that you guys are already working pretty seamlessly on the existing platform. Why decentralize it?
Right. So again, Malcolm and I can each give a weigh in. So it's a great question, and it's one at the OPSkins board meetings I've pondered. And at the end of the day, the benefits are so powerful that when you hear them, you say, well, it's clear, especially for guys like us. So most importantly, and this maybe is for those people who trade virtual items, they understand that the vast majority of the marketplaces today are what we call consignment marketplaces. And by consignment, I mean you give the marketplace the item, we hold it. You give us the cash, the buyer, we hold it, and then we do the exchange. There's a number of reasons why these markets evolved as consignment marketplaces rather than pure listing sites. But because they're consignment marketplaces, that means every single exchange holds a certain amount of items. And the exchange in China, if it doesn't have exposure to America, the American buyers can't see it. The exchange in Indonesia, no one outside of Indonesia or doesn't speak the Indonesian language can see those items. So the inventory that's available for sale, it's siloed across the world. So when you understand that, it becomes very obvious to think, well, what if we could have one global pool where all the items are listed in real time when they're available for sale? Now, when you understand that, you say, well, that would be the best of all, because price discovery and choice of all the different sorts of items you want would be far bigger than you could ever do in a given exchange. And like anyone who trades virtual currencies knows, yeah, you can go to different virtual currency exchanges, but at some point, you're like, wow, this is a lot of work, right? You got to register those. Now imagine in our case, we sell in almost 100 countries, so 100 languages spoken. So it becomes very difficult for any one marketplace to reach the entire 400 million consumer base who buy and sell these items. So from that perspective, you would say, yeah, it'd be much better if these were globally available from one location that any listing site can access, like an API, and see. So that's one reason. There's many others, but maybe I'll let Malcolm share some of the other ones.
Yeah, so I think the other problem is fundamentally, besides this liquidity issue, right? More items means there's more items for sale. More items for sale means there's more items that can get purchased at the right price. So you have lots of inventory, lots of choices. The prices get normalized because there's a global audience accessing them. That's sort of from the perspective of an exchange. But now let's look at it from the perspective of the entrepreneur, or from the perspective of the game enthusiast. If you have a blog, or you do streaming, or you have a social network related to gaming, the only way you can support yourself in running that business is basically advertising. There's really very little from the way of subscription models or e-commerce around these kinds of groups. However, they spend an enormous amount of time and a high degree of interest relative to all the other things they do in their lives that are laser focused on gaming. So they have come to OPSkins repeatedly saying, hey, we have this large audience. We would love to be able to offer the same function that OPSkins has, safety and security and the escrow, and of course, all the inventory, cross-border payments, because 90% of the transactions are across borders. So you have currency issues that are high cost and so forth. All of these things they would love to be able to offer to their audiences. And rather than having to white label OPSkins, which is not only a costly proposition but also very complicated because you have to do support and so forth, we can actually then point them to using Wax for free. All they do is they buy tokens, they can create guilds, they can create transfer agents, which allow them to actually participate directly in the ecosystem. They can get paid on every single transaction as it occurs because we've designed it to have multi-party payout for the listing site, for the selling site, for the transfer agent, appraisers if they're involved, affiliates, and so forth. So the other problem we're solving is essentially expanding the financial revenue that's available because of all this activity around skins trading and putting it into the hands of all the gamers and the enthusiasts who love these platforms. Secondary trading will be, I believe, a fantastic stimulus and catalyst to the entire ecosystem, which William mentioned is a $50 billion ecosystem. I believe if we make the OPSkins technology available through Wax as a token, inside of, say, a widget sitting on these thousands and thousands of sites that reach, the 400 million existing gamers, we will unlock, tens, maybe hundreds of billions of additional market potential and value to the ecosystem. And we use this analogy a lot. We talked about it in the white paper. If you think about somebody who ran a flea market and could sell items locally, and they'd make a couple $1,000s. When they became a power seller on eBay or a power seller on Alibaba, suddenly they could be running multi-million-dollar businesses. And this is the same idea. eBay and Alibaba and Amazon brought these individual sort of entrepreneurs and these digital entrepreneurs, these platforms that took out all the complexity, all the search, brought them all the traffic, brought all the liquidity, the payment methods, and of course, escrow. And then what happened? They created a massive new market, not only for the participants in it, but then also the shareholders. So that's kind of the other problem we're solving, which I think is decentralizing the activity of trading for many for the several hundred million gamers out there.
That sounds extremely exciting. And I mean, by you explaining that, I actually feel that I want to come back into this space, literally just to trade. You know what I'm saying? Because I just miss the whole, because games are just engaging because they're just graphical, they're fun, you just get so involved. And you mentioned guild, right? Because I understand delegated proof of stake, right? It's basically we, or at least the members all voting. But in this case, you all guys call it guild. So maybe for those who don't understand the consensus algorithm on a delegated proof of stake, but you in this case, you are calling it guilds. Care to share a little bit about the function and how does setting up or forming a guild benefit, people or members or players or groups to form a guild?
Sure. William, I'd like to start here because this is one of the most fascinating parts of this design. A guild basically is formed by someone who acquires tokens and votes. And once a guild is formed, it activates the capability to have transfer agents. And transfer agents essentially are ones who understand how to move an item from a buyer to a seller. And that could be any game where items are tradable. And it could be in any language. It could be in any location. It could be using any currencies. So this means that if you said, hey, I want to run the guild for CSGO items in Singapore, you could literally start that business and activate transfer agents who would then, they could take the software that we would make available. As you may know, OPSkins actually created the software the entire industry uses for item trading, the trade APIs, they're called bots. We created them and released them as open source. So that is literally the gold standard for how items get traded. So we'll similarly have those kinds of structures available for different kinds of item trading. And then guilds can spontaneously form based upon the desire of the game players who say, we want to trade these items. So this decentralization takes the power and puts it in the hands of the traders, the people who actually want to trade the items. And this can happen in as many languages, in as many locations, and as many games that are tradable. That is the single most important element of a guild. And ultimately that could even apply to physical items. You could, put things in a vault, create a token, send it to the recipient and say, this is redeemable for this rare watch or this one-of-a-kind painting or this coin. And then those items can be traded digitally on the Wax platform. So it's extensible, but it's self-organizing. In other words, Wax doesn't have to sit there and have to, prioritize and say, oh, do we add this game? Do we add this item? Do we do this language? OPSkins supports 16 languages, but there's hundreds of languages that would like to have item trading in their local, vernacular and so forth. It's just impossible for OPSkins to do in a centralized way.
Okay. William, do you have anything to add with regards to this part?
No, I mean,
okay.
I think we could go a month about talking about guilds, but I think for the purposes of what we've just talked about, that gives them an understanding.
Okay, cool. Okay, so basically, I have a personal question, right? Because I think this is naturally a marketplace. So there's definitely going to be liquidity issues. So I understand that you're partnering up with Kyber, District 0x, and Shapeshift as well. So care to share a little bit about that partnership going on, and are they going to be how are they tied up to this collaboration?
Yeah, first let me just say from a liquidity standpoint, for those people who are really familiar with marketplaces and whatnot, it's simply you need to be matching buyers and sellers. Sure. And people often think about an e-commerce site. They think e-commerce sites and marketplaces are the same. They're not the same. Running a marketplace is vastly more complicated because in a marketplace, you don't supply the product. That's brought by the sellers. And the buyers then come and hopefully buy enough to keep the sellers coming. So we're constantly on a global basis, region by region, balancing by game how many items come from sellers and the supply of buyers to go pick those up. And our turnover on our site is very fast. I think most sellers are very happy with it. So from a liquidity standpoint in this market, in the centralized marketplace format, we've done, I think, very, very good job. And we intend to do the very same thing on the blockchain. Keep in mind, we are not eliminating sites like OPSkins and other marketplaces. It's just that certain functions, the settlement process in particular, that's better suited for a blockchain will be done by the Wax platform. But in terms of visually merchandising these items, sites like OPSkins will exist. It's simply that the way we settle a transaction, get it from buyer to seller, will be done in the more secure way, in a lower cost way, and it give you exposure to far more buyers if you're selling an item than you could in a one-off marketplace. So I just want to give you that as sort of a background. And then Malcolm, I don't know if you want to add any color to the specific partnerships that we've been working with.
Yeah, I think William makes a good point. There's different kinds of liquidity, and liquidity of the marketplace is one really important component to understand. The other is when someone shows up with a currency, whether it's fiat, U.S. dollars, euros, Chinese yuan, and they want to buy an item, they will have to go from that currency, which of course could also be crypto, BTC, Ethereum, etc., into a skin. And there is the sort of invisible payment processing, which goes from wherever they start to a skin. And behind the scenes, seamlessly, invisible to the user, they will show up with whatever they have, and they'll end up with a skin. So if they show up with BTC, there is an exchange function that has to occur between BTC and Wax tokens, which are used to actually perform the transaction. If they show up with euros, similarly. Right now, OPSkins supports almost 100 currencies all around the world. So we're very used to this idea of like, how do you take a fiat currency and turn it into buying a skin? But BTC, Bitcoin, is the third most popular payment method on the platform from a year ago when it wasn't even there. So crypto is not only well liked by the audience, but it's extremely popular and has a lot of value for reasons probably most reviewers already understand. So the way Kyber works is it will allow people to have not just 10 trading pairs of US dollars, euros, the top 10 currencies, and maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum. It will allow literally thousands of token possibilities that they can come in and end up with a skin. Because Kyber will offer that decentralized capability for them to be able to acquire it. And then the seller, who now has received this value in Wax tokens, will then say, do I want to keep it in Wax? Or would I like to turn it into Ethereum? Or would I like to turn it into any of 1,000 other token possibilities, or into their local fiat? And so that sort of ability to go from one to another and sort of all the possibilities on one side and all the other possibilities on the other side is where partnerships with folks like Kyber are really valuable.
Okay. So now I think we got to go into some competition questions. So what sets you guys apart from your competitors, say Engine, GameFlip, or DMarkets?
Sure, I'll take that. First, we're legitimate. I only say that I only say that half in jest because honestly, as a guy who has invested in probably more ICOs than almost anyone else, and I look at those coins, I have a list that I publish that gives sort of a list of factors you should look for when you're investing or purchasing a token. But one is that when the final product is an ERC20 token, there's a very limited value for that. There's very little you can do with that token that really maximizes the full potential of a smart contract. And understand, we are trying to make a smart contract that does what involves a lot of human activity today. There is no such capability in any of those companies' contracts you're talking about. I think of those tokens as reskinned Bitcoins. I don't know how else to put it more simply. They're reskinned Bitcoins. And that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me because the people behind those companies know almost nothing about cryptos, virtually nothing. They haven't been in the space for years. They don't understand smart contracts. They look to me, frankly, more like money-raising schemes than they do like new product development to actually enhance an industry. So, I'm blunt about it because I'm trying to make sure the message gets across.
For sure.
You would be just as well off using a Bitcoin for those types of functions that those other coins do than anything else. And a Bitcoin, is kind of tested and works. We would love, by the way, to use Bitcoin to do what we do, but A, Bitcoin doesn't have an intelligence layer. Mastercoin tried to do that, and the Bitcoin core devs didn't want it. And two, both Bitcoin and Ethereum can't handle what Malcolm referred to earlier, which is the scale that we alone at OPSkins would put on that system. It simply couldn't manage it. That's the reason we have to do our own blockchain. So we've been thinking about this stuff, investing in cryptos, investing in new capabilities in cryptos since 2012. We sort of know what the roadmap is and what needs to be done. And we also know our customers actually do like cryptocurrencies. We know that because we've introduced them first to Bitcoin and just a few days ago, Ethereum. Yep. The biggest problem, by the way, with Bitcoin as a payment mechanism, and I've also said this many times, is as a mass market consumer payment mechanism, Bitcoin is a failure. And I wish it weren't, but it is. And the reason it is because the fees from miners have gone up 1,200% in a year. And we subsidize some of those fees for our customers. But when you do small dollar payment transactions, sub $10, $15, and the mining fee is $5, it's an impractical use.
It adds up.
It makes it's unaffordable, right? And so it won't work. So we were forced to build our own blockchain and our own smart contract because there is nothing around that's similar to what we need to do. But you know, these other coins are really geared, I would say that they're B2B focused, meaning they're trying to work with the video game publishers. Good luck. They're trying to go and work with thousands of video game publishers directly. Yeah, if you have 100 years, you know, we're going with the whole power of the blockchain is that it's decentralized, that you can go directly to the customer. And that's what we do with OPSkins. And so that's what we're doing with Wax. To put in an intermediary, like a video game publisher who may take a year, 2 years, 5 years to figure this stuff out, would be to really slow down what you can do already today, going direct. So there's a number of other differences, but I would ask anybody who is looking at those other coins to say, what is the evidence that those teams have done anything noteworthy ever in the cryptocurrency space? Because they're going to be the ones behind building it. Do they have any credibility in that? And then second, what is the product if it's only thing it is an ERC20 token as the final product, which is just a dumb token that goes back and forth, then what's the point? Where is the smart contract capabilities and elements that we have demonstrated in our white paper? You can read it, how we've laid it out and why we need it. I read those other white papers and I just thought this adds no value to the global skin trading industry.
Okay. Malcolm, do you have anything to add with regards to this question?
Well, I would say the other thing just to keep in mind, you know, in terms of crypto expertise, I think William makes a great point. You know, Jonathan and William on our team were, you know, the early stage core guys behind the very first ICO master coin, the very first intelligent coin, the foundational folks behind the Ethereum funding, and many other great projects. The other aspect is you have to say when you start with most of the volume, the nearest competitor in terms of volume for OPSkins is 1/10. Others 1/20th we've seen at trying to enter this space. So you have to ask yourself, when you have all that capability and the brand recognition and the customers, you know, how effective is a business proposition based on that compared to folks who are 1/20th the size? So I think the volume and the brand recognition and the trust that people have is really important in this ecosystem. We're talking about holding people's money. There are people who trade items on OPSkins for $40,000. You're not going to trust a $40,000 item to somebody who, you know, just doesn't have the credibility.
All right. So, okay, I think the chat is going a little bit wild at the moment because they want to know why the current valuation? Because, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that it's all about marketing and scalability. So, but maybe you guys have a better answer for the valuation that you all are raising this particular amount, which is, I think, 210,000 Ethereum. Okay. Yeah. Please share with the audience, please.
William? So Chris, I want to make sure I'm not.
Everyone's diving in. Everyone's diving in to answer the question.
I love it.
Let's go.
But I want to make sure I don't conflate two issues. There's the capital raise that we're doing to build out this fabulous platform. That's 210,000 Ethereum. And then there is the implied valuation of the Wax platform, right? Which is about, you could argue, 180 million. So I assume the question is, let's answer the second one first. Why is the $180 million valuation so cheap? Why aren't you willing, or why aren't you charging much more for the platform? Is that what you think the direction of the question is, Chris?
Go ahead.
Brian.
I'm saying it in
I think you switched the question, man. I think you switched the question, but
I probably am as good as anyone to answer this question, since I've spent over 20 years as a venture capitalist doing early stage venture capital investing. So,
by the way, you know, he won't toot his own horn, but you've probably heard of PayPal, right? One of the very first electronic payment processing systems on the internet, and that was one of William's investment.
Yeah, we were the first institutional investors. So the valuation is any time you value an asset, of course, there's subjective factors that get involved. And so there's not a perfect science. What we tried to do was say, if we're taking the #1 marketplace in the world for virtual items, doing billions in transactions, in a market that's growing rapidly, that's worth 50 billion today, and we're building that a new platform called Wax with all the credibility and the knowledge that we have to do that. And we are porting the volume and the knowledge of how to do this trading to Wax from OPSkins. So we're contributing that from OPSkins to Wax. We're doing it. And that valuation is less than $1 billion. I think that's a pretty good deal, especially when you compare it to the value of other coins, and relative valuations is a very effective way of looking at things. I can look at a number of coins that are traded today that have a team that's quite inexperienced and that is not involved in an existing industry. And this is more of a general point, not just a point for Wax, but a general point for anyone who's thinking of investing in an ICO. Is the management team that's building that platform, are they knowledgeable about the market first? And are they operating today in that market? And do they dominate that market? The answer is yes to all of those three questions when it comes to us. So a market size of what skin trading and virtual item trading is today, with the #1 team in the market and the team that created the #1 virtual item in the marketplace and who invented the concept of fiat to virtual item trading. I think 180 million for that. I'll tell you this, we certainly wouldn't sell OPSkins for 180 million or many multiples of that. And make no mistake, and I want to make sure this is conveyed, there may be another big company in the world, bigger than OPSkins, that's taking its business model and porting it to the blockchain, but I have not seen that business. I'd love to see it. I'd love to know if there are others, but I believe OPSkins is the largest company in the world that's porting its business model onto the blockchain. That's a pretty big deal. And I think 180 million is justified for that alone. And then when you add the other things that I've been talking about, the size of the market overall, how big it is, our dominant market position, I think a lot of Silicon Valley investors would say that's a very reasonable valuation. And of course, there's a lot of smart investors in the crypto space, and we sold out in our private pre-sale to a lot of those smart investors. So I'd say there's a lot of background information that could be implied by the types of investors who've already invested in us that hopefully will show, hey, these guys who see a lot of deals and are very sophisticated as financial investors wanted this deal enough that they got in first. So that implies something, I hope.
And how big would this, okay, for just to clarify, how long will it take you guys to be from centralized to decentralized?
It's a good question. Malcolm, you want to?
Yeah. So, the primary gating factor is really the ability for the blockchain to absorb the volume. The transactional volume, as we've mentioned, is significantly higher on OPSkins than Ethereum in its entirety could support. So it's going to take time for that chain to be live that we're talking about building. However, you could take sections of the business and begin to port them into, say, a private Ethereum chain or other technologies that are out there today. One, to demonstrate sort of the actual decentralization of Wax without actually absorbing 100% of the OPSkins volume. So you would have this intermediate step where you would have a decentralized technology that would be available, and it would be, a fraction, maybe significant fraction, or not. We'll have to see how that develops. But certainly demonstrable volume on a decentralized platform, and that we plan to see early next year. The token will actually be usable in Q4. You'll be able to actually take a token and buy a skin first. Then you'll be able to take a skin and sell it and receive a token. You'll be able to then transfer your tokens into other forms, and then you'll be able to other kinds of currencies and so forth. And then you'll be able to see essentially a blockchain like an Etherscan or blockchain, that info where you can see the transactions occurring. Those four fundamental functions will all be live in short order, because those are the kinds of things that are actually quite easy for us to do based upon not only our expertise, but where we've developed OPSkins to date. So those capabilities with Wax will be readily available. The ability to
let me say one other thing, because I don't want to forget it, which is I believe, and I've been involved in this industry since just a few years after it started, I believe there is no other consumer mass market that is as attractive for blockchain mass adoption than virtual item trading. It's a global industry. It has already digital items that need to be traded. It is a 400 million person industry right now. It's not one that's going to be developed. And they trade virtual items that have high value, subject to loss, where there's no safety net. If your virtual item gets sent to the wrong guy, you're screwed. These traits are very similar to the problems and the sorts of things we do when we trade virtual currencies or cryptocurrencies back and forth. So we think now that we're introducing what the blockchain can do to this industry, to the video game industry and item trading industry, we think it'll take a company the size of OPSkins to really push it. But you only have 4 or 5 million people in the whole world with cryptocurrency wallets that are actively used in buying and selling on any sort of e-commerce. 4 or 5 million. There's 400 million people in the world who trade virtual items. So you get 10% of those people, that's 40 million people being introduced to cryptocurrencies. That's 10x the current size after what, 8 years? So there is, the reason we've dedicated so much to this project is because as big believers in cryptocurrency and blockchain concepts overall, we're fans to do anything to help, but also because we see you need an industry as big as the virtual item trading industry. You need an industry that big to really propel blockchain and cryptocurrencies to the global mass market size that it needs to be for all of us in this industry to benefit.
Okay. And I think I need to take some very important questions. All that you have mentioned in terms of valuation and justification of the why we're using decentralized exchanges or why we're going to transition to a decentralized exchange and crypto is damn exciting. But I think there's a very important question right now that's coming from the chat. So Steam though, everything traded on OPSkins is run on Steam bots. What would prevent Valve, the parent company, from shutting it down?
So yeah, it's a very good question. So you can think of Steam, for the people in the audience who are not aware of Steam. Steam is like a private blockchain, and Valve has done a terrific job of aiding the trading of items, virtual items, back and forth between the hundreds of millions of people who use Steam. And I think Valve is a great company and Steam is a super great system. But you cannot take a virtual item, a skin, and get cash for it or any fiat on Steam. It's not allowed. So to that extent, we're not competing with Steam. We are simply providing an enhanced benefit of item trading that Steam does not obviously want to do, otherwise they would. The other thing we do, of course, is because we only do item trading, and I hope for the benefit of the audience, they understand that anytime a company does just one thing, well, they either die or they become damn good at doing it. We're the best in the world at trading virtual items. We have trading in 100 different countries. We're localized in 16 different languages. We have 100 or so different payment options. And all we focus on maniacally is how to safely take your skin and get it in the hands of another guy with the best price. Now, Valve and Steam, Valve owns Steam, are terrific businesses, but it's not their primary focus. Their primary focus is building great video games. So we are purpose-built for one thing, safely trading virtual items for skins. And we do it in a centralized marketplace. And as I said earlier, and Malcolm has said, that's because there's been no way to decentralize it until now. And now we're decentralizing it. And the principal value of decentralizing it is it's not just going to be on our exchange. It's going to be everywhere. You will be able to see every single item available to be traded anywhere in the world by tapping into the blockchain. So that's the power of what we're doing.
All right. So another question is, what are the plans for OPSkins once the platform is tokenized?
Yeah. So briefly, it's a great question because some people think, oh, you're abandoning OPSkins. No, far from it. We're enhancing OPSkins. OPSkins needs Wax. And a lot of other marketplaces probably don't get that because they don't understand the power of what a decentralized blockchain-based, smart contract-based platform can do. So OPSkins will become everything you see today. It will continue to do it with the exception of the settlement part of it, which is what today are done with bots, and OPSkins hands off the item and we hand off the cash. Now a smart contract will do that. And why is that better? Well, it's better because the smart contract is going to, for those people who don't know OPSkins and maybe are wondering, well, can I trust them or whatever? The smart contract makes a decision. The smart contract decides Was the payment made? If so, we send the item to the rightful purchaser. So for many people, as big as OPSkins is, there's still a lot of people who don't know it and maybe would be more reticent to use a third-party site for trading a valuable item. What we're hoping is we can show, look, this is software, as we say in the Bitcoin and blockchain world. In math we trust. You can't manipulate software. So that settlement part of safely handling the buying or the trade-off, the settlement between buyer and seller, that is what OPSkins is going to now transfer to Wax. And we will still do really good creative visual merchandising for buyers so they can see the skin and three-dimensional rendering models that we provide. Anything visual that helps you think about and maybe compare items back and forth.
Hopefully you guys can still hear me.
You're good.
And the back-end settlement will be done by Wax. And also the second point here is that Malcolm touched on it, but I want to emphasize it. We deal in dozens and dozens of fiat currencies. That's currencies issued by different countries. And every time a guy takes a yen and converts it to a dollar, or a euro and converts it into RMB, there's a currency conversion charge. We don't get that. The banks and financial institutions get that. And that is trillions a year. So our customers are constantly having to buy in one currency, and maybe the seller wants a different currency. And that currency conversion transition creates a cost, and the cost is borne by the consumers. So by having a universal currency, one that can be accepted by both parties, you of course don't need to convert it, which means you get rid of the currency conversion costs, which is a huge benefit. Bitcoin is great. Bitcoin allows people to buy in, to sell, and to keep one currency. The problem, as we've talked about it, is A, it's not smart contract based, so there's not a logical layer. And B, the frickin' mining fees are outrageous. So it's not a practical way. We do hundreds of thousands of individual purchases per day. And the mining fees just add up. And the blockchains aren't at a point where they can scale for that. So hopefully that gives people kind of who maybe aren't as familiar with directly virtual item trading, why we do what we do, and why Wax platform is a far superior system than what exists today.
Okay. So now I think the next question is, I understand that, of course, you all mentioned that you all are accepting hundreds of currencies. Now,
not hundreds, but yeah.
Well, at least quite a number of currencies. Okay.
More than we like.
More than you like, right? So how would you all actually encourage adoption of the Wax tokens to the mass market now?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let Malcolm talk a little bit too, because I can talk too much. But first and foremost, of course, we've already started the process of educating the video gamer market about cryptocurrencies. We did that by introducing Bitcoin.
Yep.
Act 2, introducing Ethereum, which we've just done. And I've been surprised at how many people have started to use Ethereum. Ethereum, for the audience, has lower fees, if nothing else, and that's great. So we'd rather people use Ethereum. And it is not just up to us, of course. Getting from 5 million people who actively use cryptocurrency wallets, which means it's almost irrelevant, to 400, 500 million, a billion, is not going to be just a job for Wax. It's going to be a job for the whole crypto industry. But we are going to, of course, having a very dedicated, engaged group of consumers who trust us. We are going to be doing things like videos and tutorials, and of course, lots of FAQs that help our audience learn that this stuff is trusted by OPSkins, and we're a very trusted brand, and we can help facilitate any problems that you have if you're trying to learn how to use it. So it's education. It's like originally trying to get people to understand how to use PayPal, and I was the first institutional investor there. It took a while. It's not overnight. But I don't think there's any market in the world, consumer market, that's better primed to want to use this because of the utility cryptos provide, and because of how much trading they're currently doing and how much they're paying in fiat currencies to do it. So there's a profit and greed factor that should cause our customers to say, hell, it maybe takes a little long to learn initially, but once I learn, man, it's a much cheaper and much more effective way to get access to all the items available in the world.
And Malcolm, please.
Yeah, I think the point is very clear. If you're like Skins, of which we know there are several 100 million gamers who do, and you want to sell an item, you will be exposed to wax. You won't be required to hold wax, but you'll be exposed to it. And it will be the most convenient way to receive payment for what you've transferred or sold. That is very, very powerful because it is an actual customer use case. When you hold the wax token, it will be by far the way to maximize the amount of value. If you transfer it into fiat, you're going to pay fees. If you're going to transfer it into some other cryptocurrency, you're going to pay fees. Now, they may be very small for other cryptocurrencies. We think that's great because it reduces friction and makes things easier. But ultimately, you're going to maximize the amount of value you hold by keeping your proceeds in wax tokens. The buyers...
Oh, sorry, Malcolm. I'll let you
go. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, again, maybe for some of those people who haven't read the white paper, I began my career at the Walt Disney Company. I was the CFO of Disney licensing division. I then went to, which of course we know a little bit about Disney, about getting people to adopt things like characters and consumer products. And then I joined Idea Lab, the Web 1.0 incubator that became the most successful incubator of the Web 1.0 area. I've been involved in about 400 different consumer product introductions. So it's not easy to get consumers to adopt a project, but the most important thing is that it's solving a painful problem that they currently have. More than anything else, that's the biggest thing. That's what drives people to say, let me give it a shot. And once they do, as long as there's some decent support behind it, what you typically find is they like it. And when you add things like maybe it doesn't cost as much, or maybe it's exposes me to more than I had before, they take the leap. So it's not easy to get consumer adoption, mass market consumer adoption, but our team is pretty good at it. And, in 2.5 years, OPSkins has become a global force for video game virtual item trading. So that should give some of the audience here confidence. We know what we're doing.
All right. Okay. So, guys, I think you all have highlighted very, very important features. Now, I think the crowd, I want to ask some questions from the crowd. So I think there are some questions like, how is this different from DMarket? Because just now you answered the question, but I guess this is a very specific question. Like, how you guys?
All right, I'll try it one more time. I'd like to pose a question back to the audience. How the hell is Wax the same as DMarket? They couldn't be further from each other. Wax is designed to facilitate the trading of virtual items using a smart contract. DMarket is an ERC20 token that, as far as I can tell, and I know a little bit about the subject, is a reskinned Bitcoin, right? It has no intelligence. All right. Secondly, the go-to-market, the topic we just talked about, all right? DMarket will fail. It will fail for one simple reason. The go-to-market plan is to contact 5,000 game publishers and try to convince them to adopt Bitcoin. That itself is the reason you should not invest in that token, because that strategy will fail. I have been on dozens of boards and many, many video game publishing companies. They are not receptive at this point to even learn about the blockchain, let alone to adopt some small company's token. It's just not going to happen. The other, go to our white paper, all right? What they claim, there's a list of 9 things that they claim are necessary for their success. I think item 9 is 500 million people using their system. It takes a long time to get 500 million people to use the system. So it's maybe 20 years ago, when I didn't know as much as a business guy, I would have thought, oh, you know what? I'll get some big companies to promote my product since I'm not good at consumer product marketing. It's a good idea, except it doesn't work. Companies have no interest in promoting your product. They want to promote whatever it is they're selling. And when I can go to any of those video game companies and tell them, hey, you could use the DMarket token, or you know what? You could just use frickin' Bitcoin, and it does the same thing and more people use it. I think they'll use Bitcoin. So those are a few of the ways that we're different. But as I said, we're not even comparable in terms of our go-to-market strategy is B2B, direct. we're actually decentralizing it. We are using the power of the blockchain to go to the individual buyer and seller, the traders. We're not having an intermediary try to do the heavy lifting for us. If you do invest in that, that's maybe it works, but you'll be waiting 20 years.
Now, another go-to kind of market is the mobile gaming market. Now, mobile gaming, this is a question by Ben Huglet. Mobile gaming is the fastest growing segment in the world, especially in developing areas. How will Wax position themselves in this market, and how do microtransactions come into play for this? It's a good question.
It's a good question. And obviously, we're greedy guys. We'd like to focus on mobile too. But Malcolm, you can talk about mobile.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think mobile is by far the largest opportunity facing Wax. You know, obviously, focusing on 400 million PC gamers is very interesting and potentially extremely lucrative for Wax as a project. There are about 3 times as many mobile game players, about 1.2 billion globally. Now, there's a bunch of characteristics to keep in mind there. One, the average amount of money that they spend is significantly lower. I've seen statistics 10 times less. I've seen statistics as many as 50 times less per user. Now, per user numbers are not all that useful, but it does give you a sense of kind of the magnitude of spend. So you have potentially very, very small amounts of money being transacted back and forth. Maybe that led to your point about micropayments. But it's still a very, very interesting market because it's essentially the same underlying need and desire to trade an item from one person to another person with, you know, sort of some stored value going in between. So we believe mobile gaming will be a massive opportunity for Wax. If you dominate PC gaming, tradable items on mobile games are a natural next step. And all you need to make this work on a mobile platform is the ability for an item to be traded. That's all it requires. And then somebody says, hey, I want to do a guild for mobile game X, and I'm going to start a guild and start trading it. And before you know it, it'll be traded. So it's really a function of both the audience wanting it, which is the demand side, which will drive everything, and the ability for it to be traded. And that's up to a publisher. There's many, many games, most of which do not have tradable items. As soon as they make it tradable, this ecosystem will take off like a rocket. It will literally be an unstoppable force, as we've seen over and over in PUBG and CSGO and many other games.
Yeah.
So how are you guys, you know, in terms of you guys are going to be, I mean, there are going to be probably trading bots that are going to come onto this site as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. And IGXE got banned because of trading bots. So
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Okay. No, because... You want me to explain why IG got banned?
Yes, please.
By the way, I want to add that
it's a consumer question.
No, it's good. It's good. Sure. I will add that, you know, OPSkins identified the problems with what IGXE was doing 6 weeks before they got banned, and we did a public service announcement specifically in China, where they were based, to inform the users of that on Reddit. Okay, so we saw the problem. IGXE was engaged in gambling, and that's a prohibited activity with different game companies. And if you're going to be doing gambling, not all companies, but some video game companies say they don't want to be part of that. So that's the reason they got banned. It was a rookie move. They should have known it, but they didn't. And that's why you don't trust sites that don't understand an industry. You know, we know this industry, and we know that's a no-no. So anyway, for those who didn't understand that, that's what I would tell them. You know? Yeah,
the other distinction I'd just like to point out, William, it makes a great point about IGXE, is, you know, people ask about like, hey, is this a banned activity? Like, we're engaged in a marketplace, and IGXE was engaged in gambling. Those are as different as a giraffe and a snowball. They just like literally they're in different universes. A marketplace, people are trading items back and forth for stored value. That's what we do. That's the only thing we do. Our business has thrived in the context of item trading, and I think we provide a lot of value for the ecosystem. There's a lot of problems with P2P, person-to-person trading when you don't have an intermediary. You know, people will lose their items, payments get reversed, people will steal things. We eliminate all of that risk for the consumer. OPSkins has absorbed all the fraud risk. Now, there is a lot of fraud that OPSkins spends a lot of money to prevent carrying over to the consumer. It's very expensive to do. Yeah. Wax has that exact same capability built into it. So that means you're providing a service to the industry, not doing something that's frowned upon and frankly not good. So it's a completely different approach to how do you make the ecosystem better? How do you make the experience more fun for gamers? And that's really what the value OPSkins is providing, and exactly the same function Wax will provide. And of course, all the other things that we've talked about that Wax can do.
Okay, so on the topic of gambling, right? Okay, this is specifically to William. OPSkins did mystery case opening, which users pay USD to have a chance for a better item. Isn't that gambling as well?
No, and first of all, there's a profound misunderstanding of the term. First, and I could again go on lengthy topics about this. I'll try to keep it brief. But gambling is a defined term. It's defined by the jurisdiction in which the activity is engaged. Gambling is not a natural law. It is defined by some jurisdiction, and there's a number of tests of what that is. Obviously, since we don't do gambling and we don't want to be part of that, we make sure that the things we do don't constitute gambling. When we did mystery items, what we were doing was we were giving people an opportunity to buy any item in what I guess you would call a potluck fashion on our site. In the end, we decided that it was not as useful as many of the other things that we offered. So we stopped the product, which we've done in other products as well. It's in a lot of ways, people look at it and said, oh, well, maybe, they're afraid it'll be categorized as gambling. That really wasn't the case. We were just not satisfied with the product itself. So we stopped doing it.
Right. Okay. All right. So this is one of those questions where it's about fundraising and all that. So the biggest issue I keep hearing about this ICO is that valuation. What will be done with ICO tokens if the fund raised is not fully subscribed? Will you all burn the excess?
Yeah. I don't think we've actually discussed with in the white paper what we're intending to do with that yet.
Sure. So
but, I would just say, suffice to say that, our focus is always what's best for the platform, what's best for adoption, what's best for the people who are participating in it. To some extent, I hope that the community can look at our backgrounds and how we've behaved in the past and what we do for our community now. We don't force people to work on OPSkins, but millions do. So there's a number of issues that come up if we wind up raising less tokens in the token sale than the cap. We never assumed, by the way, that we would hit the cap. The cap is the maximum amount that we would want to raise, but we always assume that it could be less than that. And if it is, we'll deal with that. I would just say we haven't yet developed all of the factors that will go into making that decision. But whatever decision we come up with, it'll be based on what's best for Wax.
All right. So, Malcolm, we are running a little bit out of time. Anything that you all would like to add just before you all close off? We end off the stream.
Yeah, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the token economy because I feel that it's very important for people to understand the value of the Wax token. So there's a concept called a guild, which we referenced earlier, and there's something called a transfer agent. And basically for an entrepreneur to participate as a transfer agent, they have to stake tokens. Staking tokens is basically a way of saying, hey, here's a number of tokens, they have a particular value, and we're putting them to the side and they're not tradable during the period that they're staked. And so this allows essentially a transfer agent to essentially post the equivalent of a bond conceptually. It's not exactly the same, but conceptually, so that they could say trade $1 million worth of items and have 4 times that, let's say 4 million worth of tokens staked. Now, as the platform increases in transactional value and volume, more tokens get staked. And that's by definition, that's the way you designed it. Now, when you have more tokens being traded, more people using those tokens, and less tokens available, that is a recipe for token appreciation. And I just wanted to make sure that your listeners understand we've thought very carefully about how to design an economy where the tokens increase in value. And we don't burn tokens, but there's no need to, because with 185 million tokens fixed and the need to stake the more transactions, that means that every day that we push more OPSkins revenue through Wax, that means the number of tokens available will go down for trading. And that means that more people are trading and less tokens available. And so we understand, lower supply, higher demand.
And that's another, and Chris, that's another point about our system versus, let's say, a DMarket or an engine or whatever, is that it's smart contract based. And we've designed these smart contracts, of course, to do the job that needs to be done, but to do it in such a way that you are benefiting all of the token holders. And what Malcolm just described is one way we do that. This pledged collateral for people who are involved in the settlement process ensures that those tokens get locked up in a smart contract, which reduces the available supply. And as he mentioned, when supply is constrained, but demand is either stable or growing, the way to fix that disequilibrium is for the price to go up. Nothing is guaranteed, but the laws of economics have held since Adam Smith first defined them, and I assume they will continue to hold. And that's why we think the way we've designed our system for Wax is both hugely beneficial to the virtual item trading industry and also beneficial for those people who understand and are going to be involved on the cryptocurrency side.
All right. So without further ado, of course, we'd like to wrap up. Thank you so much, Malcolm, and thank you so much, William, for joining us on the stream. Guys, the Wax token sale is basically still on. The pre-sale now is from the 18th of October all the way until the 31st of October. That's still on with a cap of 140,000 F. All right. And then the main sale, all right, will be from October 24th to October 31st for video gamers exclusively. So I assume these are for OPSkin users currently, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the main general public sale will be from November the 1st to November the 8th, 2017. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming on to the stream.
Thank you.
And good luck with your ICO. All right. All the best, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.